Hey, if you're watching this later, after the fact, then, sorry, this might not work. This is an unscheduled live stream, and as is always the case with the unscheduled live streams, you have to wait for people to show up. I don't know why I keep doing unscheduled live streams, except that I enjoy them. So while we wait for people to show up, I'm going to try to get the chat up and running, and we're going to go from there. Our topic of conversation this evening is the death of democracy and how it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I don't really even have to explain that to just about anyone who's watching this channel. If you're watching this channel, you already know that democracy has been on life support for some time now. All right, so we got 9 people here. That's really enough for us to get started. Just let me get the chat up and running, and we will get started. If I can get the chat up and running. Well, let's wait for my computer to... hey, Robert Owens is here. Landon Wold. Oh, that's right. All right, my channel. Now we're up to 12. I wasn't ready to get... oh, there we are. Okay, so stick with me here for 1 second. All right, so y'all know exactly where this is going. By the way, it's good to see you. It's been a while. I know, no real reason. This evening, we are drinking Yuengling's Hershey's Porter. I normally refuse to drink anything flavored. If it has if it has flavors outside of the brewing process, I won't drink it. I have no idea really if this Yuengling's Hershey's chocolate porter. Oh yeah, no, it does. Porter with natural flavors. Ah, that's a shame. I should have read the label a little closer. So this porter has natural flavors. Normally I won't drink anything flavored. Usually I'll drink anything Yuengling, and love porters. Hey, Walter Davis. So y'all will just have to forgive me and my malt liquor this evening. But it's actually pretty good. All right. I mean, I guess if they flavored it and it wasn't good, that would be pretty sad. Jesse Wellnitz is here. Merle Hager. Hey, Merle. I wish I had told one of our moderators we were doing this, Marky. Sorry, the kids are going to bed right now, so there's still not all of them are excited about it, so you'll hear a little bit of foolishness in the background. But I was talking to our buddy over at formerly North Point Axe today in Maine. I guess maybe it was yesterday, and he was the one who told me that Maine had kicked Trump off the primary ballot. Now, who knows if this will stick? It doesn't matter if it sticks or not. Shalom, Andrew Jackson. How are you, sir? It doesn't matter if it sticks or not. The point is they've done this, and the point is democracy is dead. And I don't have to tell any of you this stuff. We're just going to kind of laugh about it a little bit because, you know, these jackasses they're jackasses. I mean, they're just morons. They're so... the cognitive dissonance of someone who will tell you that Trump is a threat to democracy, so you can't vote for Trump. To protect democracy, we can't have democracy. We must take the democracy and put it in a cabinet and close the cabinet and lock the cabinet and throw away the key. You know, in order to protect, I mean, it's just ridiculous on its face, and I feel a little guilty even coming on here to talk to you all about it, because all of y'all know this. I mean, as soon as y'all heard it started in Colorado, yeah, Mark, that's a good question, and maybe we should talk about, do we believe we'll have an election this time around? I'm kind of hoping. I made the title a little provocative just to see if I could lure some leftists in, because I kind of want to try to engage them a little bit and say, okay, explain this to me. How are you the Democrats? How are you the ones who are for democracy? When, but I mean, this is an ancient old playbook on the left, you know? They don't care how much you vote as long as they control who's on the ballot. There's actual quotes out there of leftists saying this, you know, yeah, sure, let them vote. In fact, I think it's Lenin who has some quote about democracy being an excellent way to control the masses. I should have looked that up. But anywho, so this new thing in Maine happened. I haven't looked at it to see, but I tell you what is chilling about this stuff. Now I'm squirrel. Poof, I'm off on a tangent here real quick. Is due process. Yeah. Oh, good point, Andrew Jackson. Because these people are declaring him guilty of a crime, not only that he hasn't been convicted of, they're accusing him of a they're sentencing him. I'm sorry. Yes, they're sentencing. Whatever you think about the Orange Man, I happen to love him as much because he just. I love how much he enrages the left, you know, and I just love how brash he is, and he's so much fun, and everyone's been so stuffy and serious and for so long, and then this guy just comes in, you know, like a hurricane and blows the whole thing up, and you know, just you can't help but enjoy just the entertainment value. And you can say, oh, our politics shouldn't be about entertainment. Well, they should be about something. They haven't been about good governance in decades, so they might as well be entertaining. You know, what we've been doing for all these years hasn't accomplished anything. Orange Man, good. What they've been doing all these years hasn't accomplished anything. Nothing's getting any better. So we might as well be entertained, you know. Hell, now they're not even offering us bread and circuses. Now they're, you know, they're oppressing us and taking our liberties, and they're freaking boring us to death on the process. If their damn drugs and their, you know, free health care and all their poison death shots don't kill us, the boredom's going to get to us. But anyway, so I love Trump. But whatever you think about Trump, you can't tell me that these courts. Well, so I haven't really looked at the main issue yet. And from what the headlines I've read, it sounds like either the governor or the Secretary of State has taken him off the primary ballot. But I think it's going to be the same process as happened in Colorado. In Colorado, the state Supreme Court sentenced Trump for a crime he hasn't been accused of committing. He's not even been accused legally of insurrection, and they threw him off the ballot because they're saying that he engaged in an insurrection, so he's violated the 14th Amendment. It's really hard to do these things on the fly sometimes. I think it was the 14th Amendment. Someone correct me if I got that wrong. But courts don't even get to indict people. Courts don't get to accuse you of a crime. You have to be accused of the crime by the executive branch. I think that's how it works. Yeah. So the prosecutors are actually, even though they're in the legal profession, you would think they're in the judicial branch of government. Prosecutors are actually in the executive branch of government. They work for because they execute the laws. So the executive branch has to accuse you of a crime. Then the judicial branch gets to convict you of the crime. And then if you're found guilty, allegedly, I thought by a jury of your peers, then the judicial branch gets to sentence you. So as far as I can tell, and look at me, I'm no legal scholar, as we can tell. This is, I hate how good this is. This is really good. They're applying the penalty. Being thrown off the ballot is the penalty for having been convicted after having been indicted for having participated in an insurrection. So they've skipped all of the steps in between. You know, and folks like us, we get all up in arms when we talk about due process, and we say it so much no one listens anymore, and even we don't anymore. Our eyes glaze over. We all expect. This is the really sad part about all this. This is the really sad part about all this. Honestly, how incensed are we really? How surprised are we really? Probably not very much. You know, most of us are just like, oh, of course, whatever. And in reality, we should all be at the barricades, flaming torches and pitchforks in hands, just because of what an egregious assault on our system this is. No one is following the law. No one is participating in democracy, you know. But they're gonna wag their fingers at us. Yeah, you bad people. Democracy is under assault. Well, democracy is dead. I mean, if they can control who's on the ballot just willy-nilly at will, I mean, flip this around. Go to a conservative state and have the Supreme Court of, you know, South Carolina kick Biden off the ballot for high crimes and misdemeanors because of all the corruption with Ukraine and China. And watch what the left does. They explode. How dare you! Insurrection! Democracy is under assault again. They're quick going to run to the cabinet where they locked it up and get out the little key and make sure democracy is still safe in the cabinet. Or where they locked it away from the rest of us, you know? And it's... I mean, it's silly at this point. I mean, it really has, you know, it's become farce. There's an old quote, I can't remember now, something about tragedy becomes farce or something. When tragedy becomes, it's become farce. It's become farcical. It is laughable for them for anyone to pretend like we have anything resembling a system. God forbid that our founding fathers established. That's been gone forever. At least since 1916, bare minimum 1916, but probably, you know, the Federal Reserve Act, which I think was 1913, probably in some of the foolishness that happened after the Civil War. Obviously, the abolishment of slavery was good. That was not the foolishness. The foolishness was some of the other foolishness that came out of all that. And trim your beard, you damn hippie. No, I'm not gonna do it. Nope, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. Nope, won't trim my beard. That was the worst impression of Dana Carvey's impression of George H.W. Bush that has ever been done. Mark E. says, that's the problem. Most of us on the right see this coming and aren't surprised at anything, and we don't get riled up and storm the fortresses. We just say to each other, told you. It really is. We're all very jaded. Great Compromise of 1877. Remind us of what that is, Luke. That sounds familiar, but I can't place it. Yeah, Mark is 100% right. We're all like, yeah, saw this coming. And we're not surprised. Because here's the thing. Everybody wants to be Abraham Lincoln. No one wants to be John Brown. You know? Everyone wants to win the war and, you know, restore order and be the hero, and no one wants to be the martyr. And I don't blame them. I don't want to be the martyr either. I'm not out there on the barricades with my pitchfork and my torch right now. The presidential election of 1876. Yeah. Where Congress ended up choosing. Who was it they ended up choosing? Was it Hayes? I don't remember. Maybe Luke will tell us. Because you know what? Suicide's not a strategy. All right? If there is no reasonable, credible path to victory, then wasting resources and manpower on a lost cause is silly. You know, that's not courage, that's not conviction, that's just wastefulness. So I'm not encouraging action at this point because action is not. I mean, we all should be acting, but the conditions are not right for action. We're not in a place where we will win. Yeah, Brother B. Hayes. Thanks, Luke. As people of the book, should we be surprised? Shouldn't we expect this? You know, Fan Man, here's my thing about that, though. And this is one of my. So what Fan Man is saying is, as believers in scriptures, you know, and people who believe in the basic depravity of man, let's say that. You know, we all believe in, not, I'm speaking for many of you, we all believe in the basic depravity of man, so original sin, the fallen state that we all have as individuals and as a collective. We have a moral weight that drags us down towards degradation, towards sin, or you could call it entropy or decay, whatever it is. You know, that this is a natural and constant trend in our lives as individuals and societies, and that part's true. But what it's led to in Christian thought is this idea that you'll hear it said sometimes, well, brother, you know, we're not of this world. This is not our home. You know, we're just passing through. And that part is a damn lie, and a destructive lie, because what it does is it causes, you know, believers, people of the book, to wash their hands. You know, they pull the Herod. Oh, well, I'm just going to wait on Jesus. And these people are very frequently pre-tribulation millennialists. And if you are pre-trib millennialists, that's fine. I don't judge you. I don't agree, but it's not that big a deal. I don't want to start that fight. But very frequently, these people who are pulling this hand-washing routine also believe that Jesus is just going to magically take them home one day, and they're you know, just going to wake up in the arms of my Savior. And it could happen. But that's not what we're called to. We're called to dominion. We're called to victory. You know, I believe with all my heart that God loves his creation. That's why he created it. And he created it to be eternal. He doesn't want this thing to end. He doesn't want the apocalypse to happen. I believe with all my heart that God wants humans to exist in this world for as long as we possibly can. And that he would allow us to colonize the stars and explore the universe if we can keep it together. Now, I believe he's done rescuing us from ourselves. That's why when the scripture says, you know, we're in the last days, that means there's no more rescue. You know, there was a rescue in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve, you know, ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And God said, all right, hit the reset button, try again. There was another rescue at the flood when God said, reset button, try again. And there's all these points where you could say that God hit the reset button and tried again, with the final ultimate one, literal ultimate one, being Christ. Christ is the final reset button. All right, dumbasses, this is your last chance to make this work. If we can make it work, man, we can have it both worlds. We can have the wonder and glory of living fulfilling lives in this world, where we can choose to serve our master. Because remember, once this is over, there's no longer any free will. There's no longer any choice. We no longer have any sacrifices we can throw at our Creator's feet. You know, that's the beauty of this world. There's the potential for failure, and there's the I heard something on a podcast. It was a Catholic podcast. And this Catholic priest was talking about a conversation he'd had with a radical Muslim, and the Muslim had told him, you know, where there's no ability for disgrace, there's no potential for honor, and so and that's the real glory of this world. Yes, there's the potential for sin, but there's also the potential for obedience. You know, there's the potential for degradation, and there's the potential for glory. And I think that's why God loves his creation so much, and why he wants it to keep going. Hi, Wolfpack, how you doing? So the one thing, and I know you weren't saying this, whoever that, oh, it was Fan Man. As people of the book, should we be surprised? Shouldn't we expect this? That's one half of that's one half of the equation. Yes, there is a spiritual reality of decay that as individuals and as groups, we are constantly in a state of spiritual entropy, that we constantly have to fight against our sin natures, that we constantly have to be on the lookout for those negative things in ourselves and the society around us. The flip side of that is that we can overcome, that we don't have to be, and this is why the Western church has become so feminized, and why it's so weak, and why men don't want to have anything to do with it. Because the modern Western church is saying, and I know, Fan Man, this was not you. This is not what you were saying, brother. So please don't think I'm accusing you of this. But the Western church is like, oh, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just the Lord's will. In His timing, well, I'll be gone in a twinkling of the eye, brother. Just, don't get worked up about it. And that's not the template we see in Scripture. The one that I'm always, and this is a New Testament verse, and I can't think of it now. Somebody who knows their New Testament looked this up. Hey, Aiden here, how you doing, sir? It's good to see you. There's a passage in the New Testament that talks about, and I think it's the faith passage, and it says, I think it's something like this: by faith, through his obedience, Noah brought upon the flood. And it's an amazing passage, a little verse when you stop and think about it. That it was Noah's obedience, his faith-driven obedience, that is what not allowed God, but what made God decide that the timing was right to unleash the flood and perform this miracle of this very dark miracle of renewing the world through I don't even know how to describe. I don't know if sacrifice is the right word or not. And so it wasn't Noah, being passive. Noah had to say, all right, let's build an ark. He had to go do something, and that obedience, and the passage says that was driven by faith. But that manly, resolve. Hey, Isaac, I'm glad you showed up. You're the reason we had this live stream tonight. Isaac left a comment on I've been absent for a while, and Isaac left a comment. It's like, oh, it's good to see you're still alive. And I said, oh, I've been bad. I've been remiss. Isaac, I am glad that you are here. Isaac's our lead moderator. Isaac, if you look in your tool bag, you can put people in some kind of timeout now. It's supposedly different than it used to be. Isaac picked up another Anderson lower today for $60. That's a good deal on a lower. Just familiarize yourself with that. I don't know if it's anything that would be useful to you or not. I doubt we're going to need it this evening. Can I put you in timeout? I don't know. You can try it and see what happens. But it doesn't look like we're going to have a huge crowd this evening. So hopefully your moderatorship will be an easy one this evening. But where were we? So yeah, just this Hebrews 11:7. Thank you, Michael. I should get a Bible. Let's see. I got a damn computer right here. Let's look at that real quick. If I can do it without oh, Dak, I'm gonna keep forgetting the computer. The keyboard on the laptop doesn't work. That's why I've got this. All right. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not seen, this is NIV, which I don't normally like. This is the first one to come up. Hey, Missouri Southwest Mac. By faith, when Noah, warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. By his faith, he condemned the world. That's an amazing statement to me. That Noah's obedience. Let's get a different version of this because I really don't like NIV. I'm sorry, man. I try to keep the religious stuff to a bare minimum because I know eyes glaze over and it's not an effective way to communicate what's important. But no, I'm sorry. Not that. Well, I said that wrong. All right. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. Very similar. That's the New King James Version. Yeah, I like the ESV and the KJV myself too, Isaac. So this should be the prepper verse anyway. We should do a whole live stream about the prepper verse. CW, I hear Hollywood says a CW2 is coming. Civil War II. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. But anywho, so there is, and there's another verse that talks about things that are loosed in heaven are bound on earth, and things that are bound in heaven are loosed on earth. No, Barry, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. Crickets. Hey, Les, so glad you're here. I was going to email you and Sharon, but then I got busy and didn't. Oh, okay, so scroll back further than crickets. Got something important to drop, guys. I'll wait for a place to get in. Okay, Barry, drop it. We'll be watching for it. Isaac will, if I miss it, Isaac will point it out to me. You should watch the new trailer for the movie coming out called Civil War. It's about state secession and government genocide. Okay. There's no place for passivity for the Bible-believing man. And if your approach to Scripture is that it allows you to be a passive victim, then you have missed the message of Scripture. We are always called to manly action. And we could read the first chapter of Joshua. And if you've never read the first chapter of Joshua and you think, our faith is for sissies, go read the first chapter of Joshua. But anyway, that's an aside. Now, I do like that Hebrews 11:7 for about his preparedness. He saved his family through his preparedness for things not yet seen. That's prepping in a, I mean, that's the totality of prepping there in Hebrews 11:7. I don't know if I've ever thought of that before. I'm sure someone's talked about it somewhere, but boy, I've got a really bad jiggle in this little camera stand. I'm sorry. I will not use that camera stand again, men, if that's making any of you sick. Anywho, so going all the way back to Fan Man, and I haven't seen him. Yeah, it's good for you to be here, Les. Thank you. So hopefully I didn't insult him, Fan Man. If you're still here, I just used your comment as a jumping off point. So thank you very much for allowing me to jump off. And he says right here, not what I meant. He's talking about Matthew 24 through 25. And maybe he can give us a synopsis of that. Let's see if Barry has chimed in. Okay, anyway, there you go. So, we all believe democracy is dead. None of us question that. We will all, I mean, if you're watching this channel or any of the hundreds like it, you will just straight up acknowledge that democracy's dead. Democracy's been dead for a while. Tragedy has become farce. It's just funny at this point. And Isaac is foreshadowing me here. Is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing that democracy has died? Now, we need to define some terms here. We need to We need to separate democracy from self-determination because they are not the same things. Yeah, Barry, democracy is a code word for communism. Hey, Mark, how you doing? It's good to see you. Democracy and self-determination are not the same thing. In fact, in many times it feels like democracy is a, what's the right word here? Antithesis to self-determination. It seems like frequently democracy has become, yeah, we are a constitutional republic governed by laws, allegedly. Or we were at one point, or we were intended to be. Democracy has become a smokescreen for tyranny. You know, and we all know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Our founding fathers pretty much said the same thing. They hated democracy. They were completely dead set against democracy. It was only Thomas Paine and maybe Jefferson a little bit, and Ethan Allen was a weirdo too. Tell you a story. A lot of you guys, I don't know if you're familiar with InRange TV or not. There's many of you who don't like him. But hey, Dean is here. Dean, it's good to see you, brother. I wonder if Colin's going to show up. Colin almost never is in the chat, but he frequently is talking. And I just thought of that, Dean, because Colin asked me about you the other day. Where was I? Oh, InRange TV. I think InRange TV has some of the best gun content on YouTube. I know a lot of you don't like them. But I got on Reddit for some reason recently. I don't remember. Oh, I got on Reddit a long time ago, and then I don't get on there very often. Hey, Risky Krisky, how you doing, sir? We would be very interested in your thoughts on this evening's conversation, Krisky, obviously. And I found the InRange. Oh, I think it's because I'd gotten that polymer lower, that KP lower, and I was doing some research on it or something, and I don't know. Anyway, I ended up on InRange TV's Reddit, and it's a really small Reddit for how big the channel is, and they're active on it. Now, I like Reddit at times, but they're just crazy liberal leftists. I've been banned from the atheism forum. There's an atheism subreddit that I'm just banned from. I can't comment on it. They blocked me. And they blocked me on all these other, and I wasn't even being an asshole either. I was trying to be kind of really nice. I maybe was a little strident, but they were like, I thought that was anyway, it's not a free speech platform, trust me. Certainly not the atheism subreddit. But I got on InRange TV's subreddit, which is, like I said, really, really small. But if you watch InRange TV, then you're familiar with Carl. And many of you don't like Carl because he is a crazy leftist, kind of a radical atheist. But he's honest, and he's a Second Amendment absolutist, and I can work with a guy like that. No, he's not libertarian, Isaac. I'm pretty sure he's a leftist. I think he might claim to be. Yeah, Risky Krisky is going to be very familiar with him. I think Carl may call himself an anarchist, but he's a communist. But he is he's a little bit of a flaming brick thrower. He claims to be a Satanist, but he's just a straight up atheist. But great gun content and a lot of fun. And yeah, he has a lot of contacts with like the John Brown Gun Society and Antifa and all this stuff. But I watch him for his gun content, and it's excellent gun content. But his subreddit, which is run by the Sinestral Rifleman, if you watch InRange TV, that's Russell. That's the fat guy who has the monotone. He talks real boring, but he's an excellent shot, and I think he's got a little bit of humor underneath it all, but he refuses it. Anyway. Oh yeah, Risky. I love the Yankee Marshal. The Yankee Marshal is a blast. He is an absolute blast. Anyway, so I was on the subreddit, and the in-range subreddit is nothing but left-wing gun nuts, which is a lot of fun. Isaac doesn't like Yankee Marshall. It's a lot of fun to read these left-wing gun nuts because it's such a it's I hate to keep using the same terms over and over. Cognitive dissonance, though, I don't understand how they reconcile this. But anywho, it's fun to read, and they were just bashing Brownells for some reason, and they were really bashing right-wing gun guys. And I was just like, huh, well, that's interesting. And so I tried to engage in the conversation a little bit. And I tried to be really, now this wasn't either Carl or Russell. This was just the people in the subreddit. At the time, I didn't really understand how this subreddit worked. And that Carl and Russell were actually involved in it. And so I engaged this one comment, or maybe that was the whole thread, I don't know. And it said, well, we're on the right, we're not perfect. Sometimes we say crazy stuff, but, you got to look at the last few decades and you can kind of see why we're this way. And, and anytime the Second Amendment's under attack, it's always going to be, I said something about, right-wing, religious MAGA types who are going to do the majority of the defense of the Second Amendment. So, you just, sometimes you have strange bedfellows. I was trying to be really, really, kind of calm and even keeled, and I didn't want to go in there with a, flamethrower. Man, they blew up on me. How can you? And they had this crazy, man, it was bizarro world. Like, these guys felt like this country had been on a steady rightward track since Reagan. That since Reagan, the country had just been going farther and farther and farther right. And like, it was so counter to anything I had ever engaged with. I didn't know what to say. I mean, I kind of froze. I got that, what? What? The country's been trending steadily right since Reagan? I mean, at what topic have we become more right-leaning on? I can't think of one thing that's become more right-wing. I mean, I've been alive this whole time. I remember Reagan running for president. I'm not old enough to have voted for him, but I remember him and I remember his campaigns, and I'm like, what? This is just opposite world. I mean, this is Calvin ball here. Extra kudos if you can tell me what Calvin ball is. And I kind of said this guy. I'm like, what? I don't, what? But interestingly enough, the conversation got to the point where I brought up Thomas Paine, because they were really angry about how people were going after Carl for being this leftist. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, Carl's an unusual leftist, and he reminds me of Thomas Paine. Because lots of people really like Thomas Paine. I do not. I think if you followed Thomas Paine, he had some wonderful contributions to the revolution. He may have been indispensable to the revolution. The revolution may not have been successful without him. However, if you watch his life after the revolution, he goes to France, he gets involved with the French Revolution, and he gets to try to implement his ideas, and they are awful. When I say implement, he gets to be a part of implementing his ideas. He was never in charge of it or anything, but he was a delegate to the, I can't remember if it was the National Assembly or not. He was a delegate to one of the legislative bodies that got set up. French Revolution is fascinating, complicated, complex. And Thomas Paine ends up getting freaked out by the whole democracy thing, and he ends up running away and getting out of there. Thomas Jefferson, too. Jefferson and Paine were both there. Thomas Jefferson was the American ambassador to France during the Revolution. And Thomas Paine went over there to be involved in it because he was like, oh, this is it. Because Paine was a proto-communist with no bones about it. And he was for all things commie. And he ends up having to leave. And I think he ends up back in America. He spends some time in England, too. And then he ends up back in America. And he dies in obscurity kind of a disillusioned, failed figure, or his ideas failed, because his ideas were garbage. They didn't work. And actually, that's oh, anyway, to finish up my in-range TV story, I didn't go into all that detail about Thomas Paine. I just mentioned that I thought Carl reminded me of Thomas Paine a little bit. And Carl actually gets in the thread and comments. He responded to my comment and said, "Well, thank you. I consider that a compliment." And I was like, "Whoa!" I had a little interaction with Carl Casada from InRange TV, whose gun content I admire. So thank you, Carl. Anywho, I'm sorry. Back on track. Although the French Revolution and Thomas Paine is not that far off track for our conversation. Our conversation this evening is, democracy is dead and good riddance. I'm about to make an admission I should be ashamed of. I am ashamed of. I'm going to ask all of you to forgive me right now. I have never read Common Sense. So Dean and Isaac, I apologize. Did Casada try to ask you out on a date? I think he is bisexual. I don't know that for sure. I get that. I get that vibe, and I've seen him before. I'm 99% sure that I've seen him in a documentary on polyamory, where he was in a relationship with a one woman and another. So there were two dudes and one woman in this relationship. And anytime men are sharing a woman, it's because they wish the woman wasn't there. You just can never convince me that men that are sharing a woman wouldn't rather just be, with each other. That's what you call half-hearted homosexuality right there. Real men don't share their women. So I would not be surprised if he doesn't have a little sugar in his tank. Doesn't change the fact that he's an excellent shooter and has really, really good gun content. All right. So Dean says Reagan swung the Republic pretty far right, but Bush did a lot to get us back towards the center. Oh, Isaac says that Carl has a tranny lover, I think. Did not know that. I had no idea that Carl might have had a interesting. Okay, Isaac is saying during the revolution was about 2 million people in the colonies. There was 500,000 copies sold, which helped spark the rebellion to the crown. Must read, 45 pages. I will read it. There's no buy. There's just gay light. You want to hear a terrible joke? It's not a terrible joke. I think it's a hysterical joke. All women are bi, and it's the man's job to figure out if it's polar or sexual. Do what you will with that. But let's go back to, let's talk about her copy of Common Sense is $4 on Amazon. I could probably find it free online. Luke B., if this conversation starts slowing down, I will give you my theory on homosexuality. Depending how you define natural, it's strict heterosexuality that is unnatural. And we can talk about that later if anybody wants to. I'm pretty sure some heads just go, no wonder you like Carl. If I explained it to you, you might agree with me. Look at Isaac. You got again. It depends on how you define natural. Can't answer that. Sharon's here. Well, where were we at? Okay, but is it really such a bad thing that democracy is dead? And by the way, let's put the final nail on that coffin. Democracy is dead. When they can kick people off the ballot for no reason, with no due process, no trial, no conviction, not even an indictment. If some bureaucrat somewhere can just say, "Oh no, you can't run," she's laughing. There's no democracy at that point. Democracy is dead, if it ever existed. But you can't act like you can vote for whoever you want, comrade. as long as we approve them. Yes. Here is your ballot. You can vote for Comrade Stalin. Yay, democracy. You know, screw it. Also, terrible Russian accent. I apologize. I am not good at the comedy. I shouldn't try it. Okay, democracy is dead. We don't even have to discuss it. If you're here, you agree with me on that. The question is that a bad thing? Is this a tragedy? And I say absolutely not. It really is a time to start kind of throwing a little bit of a party, because another layer of the con has been stripped away. They've had to Socrates. Voting work, they wouldn't let you do it. They've had to reveal their hand just a little bit more. They've had to kind of just say, all right, well, okay, if you guys are going to be this hard to manage, we're going to have to, take away some of your privileges. You don't get to pretend you have two choices anymore. I wonder who they want us to vote for. Because they keep saying, oh, man, Trump will be so easy to beat. The Democrats are salivating to run against Trump. They know they can beat him again. Why do they keep doing this then? Why do they keep taking him off of ballots and stuff? I don't get it. It's really weird. Because also, I don't think it can actually even work. I don't know this part for a fact, but I think there's mechanisms in the party apparatus that will allow him to be made the candidate at the convention. I don't think we have to go through the primaries to pick the Republican candidate. I know the Democrats don't. They've got the superdelegate thing where they can pick their candidate at the convention and they can ignore everything that happened in the primaries. I think there's something similar for the Republicans. So it's not even like an effective strategy really to keep him off the ballot, the ultimate ballot, unless they're trying to set up the precedent and then not allow him on the presidential ballot. I hope Gavin Newsom has to step in. Of course, what do I know? I'm an idiot. I think Newsom's just a moron, and I think he's a transparent moron. But he is a slick liar, and he will just lie. Oh, hey, 10 Tigers is here. Okay, anyway. Where was I? But I'm kind of thinking this is a good thing. Not that Trump got kicked off the ballot. I mean, I'm a Trumpy. I admit it. I like the man for his entertainment value, if nothing else. But that just a little bit of the wool has had to be pulled away from so many the X number of eyes. And look, we were talking about the French Revolution in Thomas Paine earlier, where the French Revolution ends up in universal male suffrage, and then I believe it ends up in women's suffrage too. Someone can double check me on that. I'm pretty sure by the time it got to its ultimate crazy, it had the French Revolution had universal suffrage. It allegedly had democracy, allegedly. Now, what had ended up happening was that the National Assembly was meeting in Paris, and crazy Paris, they were just criminals. I mean, you can't even call them radicals. They were just criminal gangs, had besieged the National Assembly. And anytime the National Assembly did something they didn't like, they rioted, arrested everybody, killed everybody, and forced the National Assembly to do what they wanted. Or they would issue a bunch of threats. No one would show up to vote, and the Paris mobs would just go sit in everyone's seats and vote for them. Literally, this happened frequently, where the Paris mobs would surround the National Assembly, wouldn't let anyone leave, and then they would just go down on the floor and vote for the delegates. This was democracy. and it was supposedly the purest expression of democracy up to that point. And it was nothing but mob rule. But it wasn't even mob rule that was, what's the word I'm looking for? Given credibility. I can't, there's a word that means give credibility. It wasn't even mob rule that was given credibility by the fact that it was the majority of the people, the mob, a democracy at its worst can devolve into a mob, right? But that is democracy. But in this case, it wasn't even like this giant, mob who represented the majority of the people. There actually was a very small subset of the people who were willing to yell the loudest and threaten the most. And so it ends up being an oligarchy. Rather than being a democracy, it ends up being an oligarchy of the most violent criminals in society. The people who are most willing to do harm to others are the ones who end up running the democracy. Because the good people are like, okay, well, here's my vote. Yeah, okay, this is what I vote for. And the bad people are like, I'll kill you if you don't give me what you want. And there's no mechanism to resist that in even, not even just pure democracy, but even like majority democracy. So pure democracy, I'm going to say something here that might sound a little controversial, even to you men. Democracy has never actually worked. When the West was working, the suffrage, the vote was severely restricted. There was property requirements, education requirements. Women weren't allowed to vote at all. There were residency requirements. I mean, there was all these things, and the vote could be restricted sometimes to as little as like there were. I don't remember how I think it's not shires, districts maybe. I don't know. England, the way they cut up their legislative districts, some of their legislative districts, only 6 men were allowed to vote in the whole district, and then they would these 6 guys would get together in the pub and they would pick the delegate for Parliament, the MP, minister, I think that's what it is, and that's when society works. Is when there was some self-determination. I'll go ahead and jump to the punchline. I think it's patriarchal self-determination. What will make a society work is when patriarchs are able to have self-determination for the directions of their families. It's when the family unit is the most important in society. And when a family is being, and it's the patriarch who can direct the family and guide the family. I've said this before on here, and I was shocked no one tried to lynch me. I still say the only people who should be allowed to vote are Christian men who've had a Christian son who's had a son. So grandfathers down the male line. And the reason being, I'm not a fan of property requirements, because I've met a lot of really stupid, bad rich people, and I've met a lot of really good, moral, poor people. I'm not a fan of literacy requirements. I've met a lot of really stupid, bad, highly educated people, and I've known a lot of really good, moral, uneducated, ignorant people. So property, wealth, education, literacy, none of these things will filter out the bad. Will filter out. You'll never be able to filter out all the bad, and you'll never be able to get through all the good. Now here's the thing, you can't make a perfect system. We need a system that lets as much of the good through and keeps as much of the bad out as possible. And so someone just pointed out that 70% of men vote conservative and 70% of women vote liberal. So unfortunately, as much as we love our good women, there's not a lot of them. So we have to filter out all the bad women, and then we need to filter out the bad men. And the best way to do that is, obviously you've got to be, you can't function in Western society and not believe in the Bible. Our whole system is based on biblical law. The common law is based on biblical law. Our whole society is structured around it. Our family institutions, our political institutions, they all are just almost wholesale built on a foundation of the Bible. If you want to de-Christianize the West, then you actually have to start over completely. You've got to tear it down all the way to the bottom and rebuild it up on something new. Does this sound familiar? He probably does. So, Christian men, if you've lived long enough to have a grown son, then you've learned some things. You've demonstrated an ability to at least not die. And you've gotten some wisdom, and you've been able to pass on. There's no woman better than gun-toting Home Depot. What'd he say? Les is praising his wife. There's no woman better, gun-toting Home Depot loving patriot. This man has lived long enough to learn some lessons and demonstrate a basic competency about his life. He's passed on his culture to his son, and he's got a grandson, so he still has skin in the game. He's not going to just do stupid stuff because he's old and he's about to die. You know, his name is going to live on in this thing. He's still got skin in this game. I think that's the system that gets us the most competent voters and the least incompetent voters. I think that's the screen that works the best. You know, that keeps out as many of the undesirables and gets through as many of the desirables. I am open to other ideas. By the way, I think this technically makes me a Christian nationalist. But I'm not positive on that. I don't really know the true definition of Christian nationalism. Paul Smecker says, I used to think that a net taxpayer system would work best, but there needs to be more than an intelligence test, but rather a moral test to voting rights. I agree, Paul. That's an excellent way to put it. I think what I just described is the closest we can get to a moral test. But anywho. So yeah, democracy is dead. And you know what? I'm good with it because, and by the way, under my system, I can't vote yet. I have sons, I have grown sons, but they have not yet produced sons themselves. So under my proposed system, I'm not even allowed to vote yet either. But so democracy is dead, and I say good riddance. It's a failed system because look at what's happened. The more democracy we've gotten, the less function, the less our system, Les gets to vote. Thank you, Les. I've got some ideas I'd like to talk to you about. Now, by the way, I don't think that should necessarily apply to office holders. I think probably anyone should be able to run for office. It's just they shouldn't be able to vote for office. It hasn't worked. It's failed. You know, in what you end up getting is what we've gotten. What we're seeing today. Democracy is precious, and to defend democracy, we're going to take away democracy. Okay, this is, like I said, this is farce. This is comedy. This is just funny at this point. It doesn't work. It's not serious. People who claim to believe in democracy are not serious. They haven't seriously thought about where it leads. They haven't seriously looked at where it's led. In other places like the French or Sparta, we have this myth built up around Sparta. But if you actually read about Sparta, they were morons. Sparta, it is a shame to the entire Greek people that Sparta was able to dominate them for 300 years. Sparta was psychotic. I mean, absolutely psychotic. And they killed themselves. They killed themselves with their weird democracy. They had a weird system. It wasn't. They were less democratic than Athens, which is probably why they lasted as long as they did. So they had this system where only a certain racial. They weren't even racial. It was a class subset that was allowed to vote. I don't know. It is just they were psychotic. And ragingly homosexual. So I say good. What do we replace it with? Well, now there's a question. What comes next? And that's really what we got to be thinking about, man. Because like we were talking about earlier, we can't be passive in this thing. We can't just wash. Oh well, poor us. Oh well, let me wash my hands. I'm gray man. Bullshit. We've got to at least be talking about what we want to see come next. What world do we want to live in? And this is another wonderful thing about what's happening right now, because we can all look at this and say, all right, this is not working, this is dead, this is dying. What comes next? What the left wants us to do, what our overlords want us to do, is to wash our hands and say, well, what can I do? I'm just a hillbilly redneck living at the bottom of a dirt road at the end of a valley in an unfashionable land in northeast Georgia. And that we can't do. We can never become helpless. We can never. I'm saying that democracy is dead, and I still want people to vote, because I believe that the way they gauge how fast they can push this thing is by who votes. So I think there actually is a tribalism. Mark likes tribalism. I still think there's a utility to voting, not because I think democracy works. It's because I think it works as I said works. Democracy doesn't work, it works. No, it functions as the same, that's just another word for works. But the result of us voting is it is an opinion poll that only the elites get to see, that tells them how far and how fast they can push. And also when you vote, they can't steal your vote. And so it does have a certain it's a friction. When you vote, it's friction. When you vote, you're applying friction to this system where they're trying to accelerate things to escape velocity as quick as they can, and you're gumming up the works. You're being ungovernable. At least when you tell them, and that's the other thing, you're resisting. Casting a vote is an act of resistance, because you're telling them, oh no, I don't agree to this. That declaration is still a declaration of resistance. It's an act of revolution. It's an act of rebellion. So there's people who I admire greatly who don't believe in voting, and I think on one hand they're right. On the big 30,000 foot level, they're right. But coming down to a practical level of how do you function in a society that's trying to kill you, I think they're mistaken. And I think there's a utility in voting, in that you gum up the works, that you register a protest. It is an act of rebellion. For you to just say, oh no, you don't get to speak for me. Look at that, because when you don't vote, you're saying, well, screw you, my voice doesn't, I'm not going to speak for myself. Well, if you're not going to speak for yourself, don't expect someone else to speak for you. They're not going to. What's the old story, speak for yourself, John, the courtship of Miles Standish, where Miles sends his friend to go to woo this beautiful young woman for him, and she's like, and by the way, Miles Standish is an idiot, because this girl, I can't remember her name now. If Mariah walked around the corner, she. Thank you, baby. This is like the only eligible young woman in this community, and not only is that, but she's like beautiful. And she's the only single woman, and Miles Standish is like, hey, buddy, go over there, and I'm not really good with words, I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy. Go over there and convince her to marry me. And John's like, okay. And of course, he ends up with the girl. But if you're going to be Miles Standish and send John over there to woo the girl for you, well, you're going to be lonely bachelor, and John's going to be over there making babies with his hot young wife. Walter Davis just spoke my language. Walter, thank you. The movie Starship Troopers, one of the great movies of all time. To be a citizen, you had to do something for society. The fastest way was to join the military. I actually really love that movie. Now, but part of the reason why I love the movie is because I read the book long before the movie came out. I had just tripped across the book in my school library. And my vote will be canceled by a drag queen. As long as you're not voting for which drag queen wins the stripper contest. So I had read the book, and there's a book, And this book is it's utopian fiction. You know, this guy who was a veteran himself had just written how he thought the world should be, and it's a really thin little book. And he hid it in a novel. He didn't even hide it, right? I mean, he pretty much, you know, he just wrote a little manifesto of how he thought the world should work, and he sort of like, you know, wrapped it up in a little novel. And it's not great writing, but it's not terrible writing. It's entertaining. There's a reason why they made it into a movie. Oh, Isaac, I actually have read the first book in the space trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, and I started the second book, which I believe is called Malacandra. I don't remember the second book. I haven't. I started it and didn't finish it. I need to go back to it. But I thought Out of the Silent Planet was good. It's also this same sort of utopian fiction. It's more from a spiritual bent, but it worked as a story too. I enjoyed Out of the Silent Planet. Mariah has read all three recently, and she liked the first one. She thought the second one got a little weird, and she thought the third one was a drug-fueled trip. You know, she thought must have been on LSD. Apparently there's a talking bear at some point. I don't know. I'll get around to reading it eventually, probably after I read Common Sense. The problem with monarchies, Ricky, is that they get corrupted. You know, you got all the power in this one guy, and then you just need one little sneaky son of a bitch in the background, you know, to start promising, you know, getting them drunk or, you know, anyway. And they always you end up with the Habsburgs, you know. Hey, Palmetto Paratrooper, how you doing, brother? So anywho, where was I? Oh, Starship Troopers. So yeah, and it's an interesting take. It's the same issue. You know, how do you get the people? How do you have the decision making done by the people who have the most invested and who are most likely to make good policies? You know, democracy makes it so that the people most likely to be making policy are the least qualified people to do so. And Starship Troopers approach is, you know, service brings citizenship. You know, when you've got skin in the game, when you've done something, and military service was the most direct way. I don't know what Dean's responding to, but he says screw the rest of the world. Palmetto Paratrooper likes tribalism, which someone else had just said earlier too. Palmetto. Who was that who said tribalism? I think it was Mark. Might have been Paul though. Whoever it was who said tribalism earlier, I apologize. Oh, Paul says, look at what Kazakhstan and Sri Lanka did to their tyrannical governments. Oh, it was Mark. Okay. Which should have made sense. So I say democracy's dead and yay! Come on, let's party forever, fiesta. Oh, whatever it was. Come on and sing this song all night long, all night, all night, all night long. But, okay, democracy's dead. Are we going to passively sit around and wait to see what else they do to us? Are we at least going to voice our opinion? Are we at least going to be willing to say publicly, hey, I think the system that should be in place is X, whatever you think that system is. You know, they want to shame us. They love shame. And anytime anyone's trying to use shame or outrage, again, you all know this, anytime anyone's trying to control you with shame or outrage, that's a bad, destructive person. All right? Shame and outrage is the last redoubt of scoundrels and manipulators. but they want to shame us. Oh, how can you say that only Christian men should vote? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? No. All the empirical evidence I have in front of me is that Christian men build really good societies. All of the societies that everyone is fighting to get into were built by Christian men. All the evidence we have in front of us is that those are the societies that work. Why would I be ashamed of that? All these jackasses out there, follow the science. I am the science and you should follow me. Well, the science to my eyes, the thing, the empirical evidence, the things I can observe with my five senses, tell me that Christian men build great countries that everyone wants to be a part of. So why should I be embarrassed to say that? And maybe you believe that the people who make the best societies are, I don't know, pick something. What was the old song, though? One-horned, one-eyed, flying purple people. Maybe you like the one-horned, one-eyed, flying purple people eater theory of government. Fine. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't let some fat, effeminate asshole with a bad haircut, how dare you? How dare you? If you think it's the best, you gotta say it. You gotta speak up. All right, I'm going on record. I've gone on record before. I believe society should be ruled by Christian men and older Christian men. Young men can be pretty stupid sometimes. Now, yes, I am aware of the fact that I am an older Christian man. Christian being used loosely, just for clarity's sake, because I don't have the emotional energy to define the theological definition every time. Yes, the word has ceased to have any meaning in practicum, but we're talking in theory here. Now, you can tell me all day long, well, we should have no respect to race, creed, sex, or religion. Well, that's bullshit. It doesn't work. Look at the world around you. The subset of nations that people want to be a part of are very, very small. And they all have a few things in common. They were all patriarchal Christian nations at one point. The farther those nations have gotten from being patriarchal and Christian, the less well they've functioned. All right? It can't just be patriarchal, because Islamic countries don't work very well. I've been to Islamic countries. I've been to some of the best Islamic countries, the ones that weren't being bombed at the time. They don't work well. I don't know if I've ever been to an actual matriarchal country, but I've certainly been to countries where patriarchy is frowned upon now. And certainly the more we've moved away from patriarchy in the West, the less it works. You need, the UAE is looking very promising, you need patriarchy and you need Christianity. And when you have those two things together, you have a good functioning society. Yeah, I live in a matriarchal country. I know, Isaac. Now, Catholicism messes things up a little bit, but not as much as you'd think. Because, yeah, Catholic countries, here's the thing about Catholicism. It's far less patriarchal than you would think. And it's far less Christian than you would hope. Now, I'm not one of these that says, the Pope is the Antichrist and that all Catholics are the spawn of Satan. I think there are some things in their theology that makes it difficult sometimes for them. But I believe a Catholic, especially rank and file Catholics can definitely be, valid believers, and I'll see them in heaven. And yes, Mark, Catholicism has had better and worse phases. There's times when, and sometimes simultaneously, some of the lives of the saints and some of the martyrs were amazing people, with amazing steadfastness in the face of some pretty horrific persecution, who spread the gospel in a lot of instances. Now, and I just want to be careful, because I know some wonderful Catholics who I love. but this formula seems to work better the less Catholic a Christian nation is. And I think that just has some things to do with, what do we want to say here? I don't want to do a critique of the Catholic Church. I think our world would be better if the Catholic Church was in a stronger position than it is right now. So I don't want to be critical of my Catholic brethren, especially because Roe versus Wade was overturned by a Catholic Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas, who's one of the heroes, modern heroes of the Republic, is a devout Catholic. Oh, come on, Zach. Antonin Scalia was a devout Catholic, but he's no longer on the Supreme Court because he's dead. The woman, God, why? Why is this happening to me? Oh, well, that woman that Trump put on was Catholic. Kavanaugh's Catholic. Samuel Alito, who wrote the Roe versus Wade overturning decision, was Amy Coney Barrett. Thank you, Isaac. Is Catholic. Now also, hey, Mark, appreciate you being with us. Hey, Amanda, rib of palmetto. Awesome. Yeah, Amy Coney Barrett. Thank you, Amanda. These are some powerful Catholic thinkers. But then like Les just puts up there, Biden is also, supposedly a practicing Catholic. Nancy Pelosi is also supposedly a practicing Catholic. So the first settlers, Andrew, were, so it depends on who you look at. If you look at Jamestown, they were Anglicans. So technically Protestants, but as light Protestant as possible. And then if you start with Plymouth Rock, then that was a mixed bag. They were about, I want to say they were 1/3 Puritans, which were hardline Protestants at the time. And then I think 2/3 Anglican. I might have that reversed. The Puritans were definitely ascendant in that group, though. So you can say, and the Mayflower Compact was written by it must have been the other way around. The Puritans must have been the majority of the group, and the Anglicans must have been the minority. So the Mayflower Compact, the Mayflower Compact, and all of that, and the Plymouth Rock colony was Puritan, which was a hardline, mildly Calvinist Protestant sect that was actually being persecuted in England, which is why they left. Yeah, Amanda. So that's what Catholicism can devolve down into. When it starts getting at its worst, it's, being Catholic means that you can do whatever you want as long as you confess to the priest later, and that's what at its worst it can devolve down into. Yeah, the Puritans, the original Puritans who came into this country were my heroes. I might not be a Torah keeper if there was a real Puritan church around, because they were awesome. They were a blast, and they were actually kind of close to Torah keepers themselves in a lot of ways. But anywho, so yeah, there we go. So are we going to be? There's no other way to say this. Are we going to be mice? Or are we going to be men? Are we going to sit in the corner and quiver and hope that some crumbs fall down? Isaac says he's a Calvinist Puritan at heart. And maybe we can rush out and grab a crumb and dart back to the corner real quick and then we eat our little crumb. Or are we at least going to try to roar? The mouse that roared was still a mouse. Maybe the roar doesn't work. Maybe we still have to retreat back on our little corner and cower. But why not roar first? You know, you can always retreat if you need to. At least see if you can bluff your way through this thing a little bit. So I'm begging you, speak up. Democracy is dead. Pluralism has failed. Multiculturalism is a travesty. None of these things work. Yes, they're going to call you a racist. Are you a racist? Absolutely not. Or you could be. I don't know you personally. But the fact that you reject pluralism and multiculturalism doesn't make you a racist. It makes you a culturalist, maybe. It makes you a realist. But it doesn't mean you hate someone because of their race or you think that race isn't capable of achieving more. It means that a certain system works and other systems don't work. And the system you think works should be promoted. This is what we should admire about our Muslim neighbors. Their system doesn't work, as demonstrated by their countries, but they believe it works. They've been told it works, and they're not shy about advocating for it, imposing it, enforcing it. Why should we act all embarrassed and ashamed? Why are we like, oh, well, yeah, we have the answer. We've demonstrated our ability to solve this problem, but I don't want to insult you or anything. Bullshit. All right? What we did worked. We didn't get it all right. We had things we have to apologize for. We had things we had to fix. But we threw out the baby with the bathwater. And we let a bunch of weirdos, a bunch of just weirdos, effeminate men and butchy women with no, hey, buddy. Hey, guys, I'm going to have to shut this down. I just had a family show up out of nowhere that I wasn't expecting. So I'm going to tell you all good night and how much we appreciate you. This is a good thing, by the way, someone coming home. I just caught me off guard. I went longer than I meant to. So, men, we appreciate you. Isaac, thank you. Les, Sharon, we appreciate you guys. And I'm sorry if anyway, I got to go. I'm really excited. Appreciate you guys. Have a good night.